So let's move into it here. We talked last week, and there's over 100 retirement and financial related changes to the Secure Act. So there's a big emphasis on Roth. I talked last week. I gave you some key items, and we're going to review those a bit, but we're going to expand on it. And we should be here until about 10:30, 10:25, I'm assuming. So the first thing everybody's talking about the RMDs. RMDs are pushed back for some folks. So if you were taking, if you turned 72, if you remember the Secure Act that came to us in, 2019, I think that's right. Let's see, I might have it written here. No. So the original Secure Act changed the required minimum distribution date from 70 and a half to 72. There's a little bit of confusion, what if you're kind of in between there, and it's always confusing. But now the new Secure Act says, well, if you turn 73 in 2023, that's when you have to begin your RMDs. So if you were planning, and we have clients who were on this track, if you were turning 72 in 2022, we were planning your RMDs for if you were turning 72 in 2023, we were planning your RMDs already for 2023, but now all that's changed. You can wait another year, so you don't have to begin your RMDs, required minimum distribution. So again, RMDs are the amount of money that the government says you must take out of your IRAs every year, and if you don't take it, you're penalized, and that has changed too. So we're going to talk about the penalties. But now you begin your RMDs at age 73 in 2023. So if you're planning on it at age 72, you can skip it. And then it evolves a little bit more from there. Let me just, so screen sharing is a little different. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Just stand by and be patient. All right, so folks, I won't be able to share my whiteboard. So my apologies for that. These are kind of the bugs that we're working on. So RMDs are pushed back. We'll just jump into that. So RMDs are pushed back for some. For if you're born from 1950 or earlier, no changes for you. From 1951 to 1958, then your required minimum distributions begin at age 73. And from 1959 or later, your RMDs begin at age 75. I thank you all for seeing that here, or let me know what's going on. All right, now the penalty is greatly reduced. So the penalty on RMDs was a static 50%. So if you failed to take your RMD, the penalty was 50% of what you should have taken for that year. So if your RMD for the year was $30,000, then your penalty would have been $15,000. And these penalties are large, and unfortunately, it happens to people that sometimes are forgetful. Thank you for everybody letting me know. And we'll remedy that. We'll work through these bugs. I appreciate your patience. But so the penalty is now reduced to 50%, or from 50% to 25%, and it might be 10%. Now we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But that while that's good, I actually have some concerns about that change in that penalty, because I think it's going to result in fact, more penalties. So let me bring this section down. I really wanted to be able to share this this letter from Sarah Brenner, because I thought it was just so much fun the way she talked about the RMDs. And let me just see if I can. Okay, you're stuck with just me today. If we want sound, you're stuck with just me today. So we'll change that for sure for next week. But Sarah Brenner from the Ed Slott Group did a really, really great comparison. And Sarah's a big music fan, and I really liked, I shared with you before that she used this description of how to think about inherited IRAs, and because as you know, that's become very complicated. If you inherited IRA funds, there are times that you have to deplete the funds by the 10th year, and you don't have to take any distributions. in the meantime, and there are times that you must take distributions during that 10-year period. And that can be confusing. And Sarah just boiled it down to, think of the Rolling Stones song, Start Me Up. And she said, if you start, you never stop. Start me up and you never stop. And that's really, that works beautifully for this RMD issue. So if you're inherited an IRA and the person who you inherited from had already begun their RMDs, then you have to continue the RMDs. If they hadn't, then you don't. That's not in the Secure Act 2.0, but I just wanted to share that with you because Sarah, again, uses a great analogy of rock stars here in explaining the RMDs. So I'm just going to read it to you. Unfortunately, you can't see it today. So she writes, the delayed RMD age applies to those who reach age 72 in 2023 or later. We talked about that. They will not have to start taking RMDs until next year, 2024, when they reach age 73. The deadline for taking their first RMD would be April 1st of 2025. We talked about all of that. Then in her example, she uses Mick Mars, the guitarist for the heavy metal band Motley Crue. So actually, Motley Crue was one of the first concerts that I went to. They had opened up for somebody else, but it's kind of funny. But she writes, Mick Mars, guitarist for the heavy metal band Motley Crue, will no doubt celebrate his 72nd birthday on May 4th of 2023 with an all-night rager, she says. He can also celebrate being able to delay his RMD from his retirement account. Mick will have to start taking RMDs for 2024 when he reaches age 73. He will need to take his first RMD by April 1st of 2025, as we talked about. Those who reached age 72 in 2022 are not so fortunate. They will be 73, of course, in 2023, but they must continue taking RMDs. And in this example, she uses Stevie Van Zandt, the guitarist for Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, also famous Sopranos. And what was his Syl in the Sopranos? He was great in that. You can delay the RMD a little bit longer if you reach, Stevie Van Zandt and the E Street Band may be born to run, but he cannot run away from RMDs. He reached age 72 on November 22nd, 2022. He must take an RMD for 2022 by April 1st of 2023 if he didn't do it beforehand. And he will have to take his 2023 RMD by December 31st, 2023. So I think that's just a fun way for Sarah to show us, two different examples by people we may or may not know. So if you reach age 72 this year, she writes, you are like Mick, and you can catch a break on the Secure Act 2.0. You can delay your RMD a little longer. You can party hard like Mick and celebrate that on your 72nd birthday. However, if you're reaching age 73 this year, you and Stevie have something in common. You can't outrun your 2023 RMD. You will need to take it by the end of the year. Great work, Sarah. So that's RMDs. Big changes with RMDs in the Secure Act. We'll talk just a little bit about that again, but I do have some concerns. Not everybody has this education and this help that we offer, and they just wait to take their any distributions, including Roth conversions, out of their IRA accounts until they absolutely have to. And for some people, this will be a detriment because they'll push it till age 73, 75, whatever that's going to be for them. And the risk, of course, is higher taxes. Higher taxes on your Social Security, more IRMA, income-related monthly adjustment amounts. So the folks who don't get this education, who aren't on here every Tuesday with us, who, Doug, I'll pick you out. I love the email you sent me that said, I appreciate the information you've given us. I was able to do Roth conversions, and you did some other work, and I think that's great. And we can't help everybody individually, but we can get the word out there as much as possible, and that's one of the reasons we do these webinars. So that's great. But I do have some concerns about this is going to force, it is really a forced delay of the forced distribution, but it's going to cause more people to pay higher tax. And don't think for a minute that Congress isn't thinking about that. So another big one is the required minimum distribution and retirement plans are eliminated. Now, of course, we know that the traditional retirement plans, your traditional 401k, your traditional 403b, they've had required minimum distributions all along, and they're very complex, and people get in a lot of trouble because they think that they can take their required minimum distribution from their IRA for their 401k. You can't do that. You can't aggregate them like you can your IRAs. So it can be very, very difficult. But even the Roth options in your retirement plans, your 401ks, your 403bs, etc., required you to take required minimum distributions. Now, they weren't taxable, but they were still a requirement, as opposed to Roth IRAs that were, of course, for the account owner, not anybody who inherits it, but your Roth IRA. There are no RMDs. This was another area of confusion that thankfully Congress eliminated. So RMDs for Roth 401ks, one of the biggest differences between Roth IRAs and Roth plan accounts has been that the Roth IRA owners are not subject to required distributions, while Roth 401k participants are. This will change beginning in 2024, so that's important. Not until next year, when Roth 401k accounts also become exempt from RMDs. So starting next year in 2024, no more required minimum distributions from your Roth 401ks. So very, very good. Another big plan change is there's higher catch-up contributions. So if you're 50 or older, your plan probably allows, the IRS says you can, but remember the plan can be more restrictive. The plan probably allows you to make catch-up contributions above your regular deferral limit. So, for example, in 2023, you can put, if you're over 50, you can put another $7,500 on top of your regular $22,500 of deferrals if you max your deferrals. So you can because you're over 50, you put another $7,500. Starting in 2025, now again, this Secure Act 2.0, this is another confusing thing, and this is how this is probably going to work. Many people Google things and read things and maybe listen to this broadcast, and they'll say, well, wait a minute, I heard that now I can make a higher contribution. There's a whole other Roth portion too into my 401k. And you may forget that this portion of it doesn't start until 2025. So starting in 2025, employees age 60, 61, 62, or 63 can make an even higher catch-up contribution. So that's another bit of confusion. So everybody can make their this year $22,500. You can do an extra $7,500 on top of that. But starting in 2025, employees age 60, 61, 62, or 63, just that 4-year window there, can make an even higher catch-up contribution. The age 60 to 63 catch-up limit for 2025 will be 150% of the regular catch-up limit in effect for 2024. So honestly, I need some clarity, and I think that's one of the things I'm looking for today from the webinar. Is it always going to be indexed on the 2024 number? I'm reading it like it will be, but we'll see what happens, what information we get from that. So let me say it again, because I know it's a little confusing. If you're over 50 right now, we all know that you can make your standard deferral plus your $7,500 for 2023. So $22,000 is your standard deferral plus another $7,500. But starting in 2025, employees age 60, 61, 62, or 63, I don't know why they just didn't say over 60, can make an even higher catch-up contribution, and that's 150% of what the regular catch-up contribution limit in effect for 2024. That also includes, there are higher catch-ups also available for simple IRA participants, and there's also other changes for simple and SEP IRA participants. There's also a mandatory Roth catch-up contribution. And this really starts where you start to see the Roth push of the Secure Act 2.0, which I absolutely love, because it just reinforces the idea that Roth is here to stay. There is no risk in any time soon of Congress making the change, because they want that tax money. Mandatory Roth catch-up contributions. Starting in 2024, again, next year, certain age 50 or older plan participants who want to make catch-up contributions must make them as Roth contributions. So there is a question about, if the plan allows for the contribution. I'm interested to see if there's no Roth option in your 401k, or now is the Department of Labor going to force you to have a Roth option in your 401k? That would be good. That would be good for savers for sure. This applies to anyone with wages in excess of $145,000 indexed for inflation. So it's not anybody over 50. Now, I said certain age 50, but if you make more than $145,000, then you have to put your catch-up contributions into a Roth option. There's some more comment about self-employed individuals, but that's something we can talk about one-on-one. Now, this is a big one also, Roth employer contributions. Up to now, plan employer contributions had to always be on a pre-tax basis. They had to put it in the traditional silo of your 401k. Remember, you can have a traditional IRA and a tax-free or Roth IRA. And you could, prior to this Secure Act, you could make your own contributions into the Roth side, but the employer contributions had to go into the traditional. Now, the employer contributions can go into the Roth side of it. Now, it doesn't require that, but now they can go into the Roth side of it. So I think that is probably a good option for most retirees or most folks still saving for retirement planning. But it is something you have to consider for yourself, and of course, your employer's got to allow it in the plan as well. But you've got to be aware of this, that if you take that $7,500 now and you take it out of that tax deferred bucket and put it into the tax-free bucket, then you are going to have additional taxable income on that money. It's probably better to pay the tax now than to pay it later when taxes are going to be higher, as you know, but just don't be surprised by that and plan for it. There's also matches on student debt. So starting in 2024, the Secure Act 2.0 allows employers to make matching plan contributions on student loan repayments made by employees. This is optional, but it's allowable. For those of you who have solo 401ks or are thinking about starting a solo 401k, so solo 401ks have become very, very popular because in the past, self-employed people, if it's just you or you and a spouse, you've used plans like a simple IRA or a SEP IRA, and they didn't allow for Roth options in those simple IRAs or SEP IRAs. 401ks have a lot more flexibility and tax planning options, in my opinion. That's changed under the Secure Act, but it used to be that you had to establish a plan. If you wanted a plan for 2023, for example, you had to establish that plan by the end of the year 2022. And some people just don't think that far ahead. They've done their taxes. Now they say, oh, geez, I would have been better off with a 401k. But under the Secure Act, the new Secure Act 2.0, sole proprietors and other similarly taxed businesses now have until the due date without extensions of the individual's tax return to open up a new plan for the plan year. That's just good planning sense, and it makes sense. And I wish that they would allow us to do that for Roth conversions also. Again, that's not in here. But boy, wouldn't it make our lives so much easier if we had until the tax filing deadline the following year to do Roth conversions. But now you have until the tax filing deadline of to establish a solo 401k. There's an auto enrollment for new plans. So beginning again in 2024, many newly established company plans will be required to automatically enroll employees in the plan unless they choose to opt out. That's unfortunate. But however, contrary to certain news reports, the provision, and there's been some conflicts and some bad information out there, it doesn't apply to existing plans. So we have an existing 401k plan for Attleboro Wealth employees, and we are not required to automatically enroll employees in the plan. But that misinformation is kind of out there. There are now emergency savings accounts. Another new option for employees is to offer lower paid workers a special sub account within the plan for emergency saving contributions made on a Roth basis. So again, after tax, they get to put that aside. Lifetime employee contributions to these accounts are limited to $2,500 or a lower amount set by the employer. So it can be, the IRS says it can be as high as $2,500. The employer can lower that if they'd like. These contributions must be held in a safe investment, and there are relaxed distribution rules, including no 10% penalty for those under age 59 and a half. Emergency savings accounts are available in 2024. Again, 2024. And you see that a lot of these plan changes are 2024 because the plan providers and the sponsors, they have to have an opportunity to make the changes in these plans. Okay, so there some of the plan changes. We talked about Rothification is here. Another push towards Roth is beginning in this year, 2023. SEP and simple plans can allow Roth contributions. That wasn't something that was able to be done before. That's a reason a lot of people opted for the solo 401ks. Also, plans can allow employer contributions to be made on a Roth or after-tax basis. That's huge. In future years, there will even be more opportunities to fund Roth accounts. Let's see. Expanded exceptions to the 10% early distribution penalty. So I think, let me just go back to that savings account that's for lower wage individuals that can be set up in a 401k. So up to $2,500. I like to think that will encourage people to get involved in the plan and save more if they know that they can pull that $2,500 out for without penalty at any time. Now you might say, or someone might say, well, geez, that it's not really great, and people should just keep their money in their plan. And I have some notes about that in this next section as well, because part of me is concerned about that as well. But having that up to $2,500 buffer in there, just in case, could help a lot of people in a mindset of, well, I can always pull that out if I need it. But they also expanded the exceptions to the 10% early distribution penalty. So that's a big deal. You can take loans. Some plans allow loans, some don't. I used to work with one 401k, and they didn't allow loans. And they would. I saw a situation where they actually fired somebody and hired him back a few weeks later just so he could take a distribution out of his 401k. Kind of crazy, but when your back's against the wall, sometimes it can make sense to borrow from that 401k. You've got to look at everything, but for some people who are in a dire situation, it can make sense. But for 2023, the Secure Act expands the age 50 exception by adding new categories of public safety workers and allowing penalty-free distributions after 25 years of service. Secure Act also includes a slew of new exceptions to the 10% early distribution penalty. 2 of those are effective in 2023. Victims of disaster and those who are terminally ill will be able to access their retirement accounts early without penalty. That's great. Congress recognizes that sometimes life happens and people in dire straits need access to money. The bad news here I wrote as a side here is that adding to an ever-growing list of exceptions only increases the likelihood of leakage of retirement savings dollars, and that will prevent many Americans from having enough savings at retirement. So the Americans as a whole, not you folks, right? Not my, fortunately, not my clients and folks who are on here every day, but the majority of Americans are not great at saving for retirement. So we're going to talk about these self-certification options that are out there for folks who are under 59 and a half, and just having so much flexibility on how much you can draw out of your 401k without penalty. Not to be negative, but it could put, stress more on our retirement system because people just might be taking things out for things that aren't an emergency. So here's some really important items, though, that are allowed. We talked about natural disaster. We talked about, some public safety workers, the age 50 exception. That's been an ongoing, that's been on the books for some time. They just expanded it. But domestic abuse. So effective in 2024, new exceptions created for victims of domestic abuse that occurred within the previous 12 months by a spouse or a domestic partner. I personally think that that's a little unnecessary, that 12 months. But again, I didn't write the legislation. So those in need of leveraging this exception can self-certify. So there's no paperwork requirements. They basically say that this is what happened, that they experienced domestic abuse, and they can withdraw the lesser of $10,000, and that'll be indexed for inflation. It'll go up every year. It should go up every year. Or 50% of the balance of the account. So whichever is greater, the $10,000 or 50% of the balance of the account. The new exception applies to plans like 401ks and IRAs. And there's a broad definition of domestic abuse, which I won't read to you. Distributions taken under this exception can be repaid on the same or to another like account over 3 years, and income taxes on repaid dollars will be refunded. That last part is great. Financial emergencies. So there's a lot of court cases that we review when we go to these slot updates, and a lot of them are, well, somebody takes money out and they said, well, I had a financial emergency. And the courts really haven't been open to extending that financial emergency to waive the 10% penalty on early withdrawal. So Congress wrote in, some allowances for that. It's relatively small, but there is an ability to pull out some money. So again, effective in 2024, the new legislation includes a 10% penalty waiver for financial emergencies. It's extremely limited. If a person faces unforeseeable personal expenses or immediate financial needs relating to a personal or family emergency, they can dip into these savings. They can self-certify, which means they, just certify that this happened. There's no proof needed, but the dollar amount's limited. So it's a maximum amount of $1,000. And if you take that $1,000, no other emergency, that's per count. That's, one, you're limited to one per calendar year, and it's a maximum of 1,000. No other emergency distributions may be taken in the following 3 years or until the original distribution is repaid. So if you pay it back next year, I'm assuming that you could take it back out again if you need it. Or future salary deferrals or contributions for IRAs meet or exceed the amount of the emergency personal expense distribution. So if you take $1,000 out in 2024, for example, you have a financial emergency, and then you're contributing and it reaches over that $1,000, that seems to meet the requirement. Okay. We talked about the missed RMD penalties. So again, it reduces the penalty for missed RMDs from 50% to 25%. And if the corrected action is taken in a timely manner, the penalty is further reduced to 10%. So it falls in line more with the 10% early distribution penalty. It reduces that ridiculous 50% penalty on the missed RMD. But here's what I think will happen. What we'll see if we look back on this 5 years from now, 6 years from now, we're going to see more penalties applied. Because in the past, what people would do is if they missed it, they'd take the distribution as soon as possible. They'd file the necessary paperwork with the IRS, and I've never seen it where that hasn't been forgiven. I've also never heard of anybody I run in a pretty knowledgeable group with the slot folks. I've never heard of anybody that's been penalized when it's a true miss, one time. If it goes on for many years, of course, there's assessments, but so I think dropping this down to 25% and 10%, we're actually going to see more penalties. So it's something that we always paid attention to it, but it's something you're going to want to be keenly aware of. Rollovers from 529 plans to Roth IRAs. This is a really good thing. A lot of limitations, but and I noticed we're well over 10:25. It's 10:37, but I appreciate you staying with me. So now you can take a portion with some limitations of your 529 plans or roll them over to a Roth. So this is a relief for a lot of folks. Folks are hesitant to contribute to 529 plans sometimes because the allowances, although they've been expanded over the past few years, are restrictive to education expenses. And what happens if you get a scholarship? What happens if the child you're saving for ends up not going to school? So there are some limitations, but you can roll over now 529 plan funds to a Roth IRA. So let's talk about those limitations. The 529 must have been in place for over 15 years. The annual rollovers cannot exceed the annual Roth IRA contribution limit. And the total lifetime rollovers cannot exceed $35,000. So it could be that $35,000 may take several years to roll over to a Roth IRA, but that's okay. Let's see. The Roth IRA must be in the name of the 529 beneficiary, not the 529 owner, if it's different, and that can be different. The 529 plan we talked about must be open for more than 15 years. What's not clear is if there's a new 15-year waiting period is required when someone changes the beneficiary. So this is information we're paying attention to. We're going to need further clarification from the IRS. Rollover amounts can't include any 529 contributions made in the preceding 5-year period. So even if the plan has been in place for 15 years, and let's just say you've got $35,000 in there, but $30,000 of that contribution, not growth, but contribution came in the previous 5 years, that's not eligible for rollovers. Rollovers are subject to annual Roth IRA contribution limits. If the Roth IRA contribution limit in 2024 remains at $6,500, then, for example, no more than $6,500 could be rolled over to the Roth. So it could take several years. Let's say you met all the requirements, no contributions prior to, or let's say the $35,000 has been in there. The plan's been in place for 15 years. None of that $35,000 is contributions that was made in the previous 5 years. You could still take many years to have to roll that over because you're maxed at $6,500 a year. However, there are no income limitations on the Roth IRA contributions or the rollover. So if you make too much money, we all know that you can't contribute to a Roth IRA. But the 529 rollovers don't apply. The contribution limits apply, but not the income limits. So that's really important. And just as a reminder, let's talk about what's not included in the Secure Act 2.0, because I think these are two exciting things. There are still no limitations on Roth conversions. You can convert as little or as much as you'd like. You can convert $1,000 in 2023, or you can convert $100 million in 2023 if you'd like. You just have to pay the tax on it. So that is great news. There was some discussion about making limits on Roth conversions. There were big dollar limits, but that's good that wasn't included in this law. And again, no elimination of the backdoor Roth IRA contributions. This was certainly on the chopping block. The IRS has endorsed this as a legitimate process. You can make a contribution to a non-deductible IRA and then convert that money to a Roth IRA, even if you're above the income limits for a Roth IRA. You have to be careful of the pro rata rule. If you have money inside of a traditional IRA, it's going to greatly affect that, so be careful about it. All right, so that's it for today, folks. I'll see you next week. We're going to fly with YouTube again next week. I hope that this worked out pretty well for you. I'm sorry about the glitch with the sound. We'll get that worked on before between this week and next week, hopefully. And I'd love to hear your feedback and questions. So certainly your feedback on how this went for you. Was the quality as good or not as good or better? The ease of use, so to speak. I'd love to hear those feedback. So you can email me at questions@attleborowealth.com. I appreciate you being here. Have a great week. Reach out if you have any questions. If you're a client and you need to see us, please reach out. Give us a phone call, and we'll schedule something as soon as possible. And otherwise, see you next week. Take care.